I used to think heartbreak had a shape, jagged, sharp, like shattered glass you step on barefoot in the dark. But I was wrong. Heartbreak is slow. It's the silence in a group chat that used to buzz every morning. It's the sound of your mother saying, "Don't make this about you," when your sister sends you a wedding invitation with your ex-fiancé's name on it. My name is Elena Morrow, and until 6 months ago, I thought I was going to marry Daniel. We were together for 5 years, through college, through job rejections, through his depression, through my 2 surgeries. I was the one who stayed when he wanted to drop out of law school. I was the one who loaned him money from my savings when he didn't have rent. I was the one who told him he'd make it, and he did make it. Only by then, he was already making out with my younger sister, Lily. It started small. "She's just helping me with the engagement party," he said. Then it was, "You know how she is. Don't read into it." The signs were always dressed up as innocence. The late texts, the quiet when I entered the room, the time I saw his Spotify account still connected to my phone, and it showed a playlist called Our Little Secret. That was the beginning of the end. The breakup came not with a bang, but a shrug. Daniel sat across from me at the coffee shop where he first asked me out and said, "I just feel like we've grown in different directions." I didn't ask about Lily. I didn't have to. My parents were neutral. Neutral like a fire alarm that refuses to go off. Neutral like watching someone drown and saying, "They'll figure it out." They said they loved us both. They didn't want to choose sides. But the truth came out in champagne and ivory cardstock. "Elena, we would be honored if you would stand by Lily's side as her bridesmaid on the most important day of her life. Love, Lily and Daniel." There it was. The twist in the knife. Not only did they betray me, they wanted me to smile for the photos. The group chat lit up that night, Mom. Lily wanted to be the bigger person and include you. Dad. It's been months, sweetheart. You can't stay bitter forever. Lily. I just thought it would be healing for you. Closure. And I want my big sister with me on my big day. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My hands were shaking. Too hard. But I didn't block them. I wanted to watch them dig their own graves. For weeks I said nothing. Not yes, not no. And they mistook my silence for consent. The fittings began. A soft blush satin dress. Off the shoulder. Backless. Delicate. Innocent. The color of surrender, I let them think I would wear it. Let them believe I'd stand beside her with a bouquet and a broken smile. But I was planning something else. Something silent. Something unforgettable. The dress hung in my closet like a taunt, still wrapped in its plastic sheath, untouched. Lily had sent it over with a handwritten note folded neatly into the garment bag. "Can't wait to see you walking down the aisle with me, like we used to dream about when we were kids. Love you always." She had drawn a little heart beside her name, that same looping L she used when signing yearbooks and fake excuses in high school. But here's what she forgot. We never dreamed of walking down the aisle together. I dreamed of walking down the aisle with the man I loved. She dreamed of being adored, by anyone, at any cost. I started collecting my evidence quietly. Screenshots, receipts, old photos from my phone, Venmo history. A voice recording from the night Daniel cried into my lap, confessing that if I ever left him, he'd fall apart. And most importantly, a copy of a shared loan agreement I'd co-signed when he was 2 months behind on rent and needed my help to avoid eviction. It wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was financial theft wrapped in romance. I had everything, but I wasn't going to post it. Not yet. The wedding was 4 weeks away. My parents were hosting the rehearsal dinner at their country house. Just family and the bridal party, Mom said with a carefully curated smile when she called to ask if I'd attend. I showed up in a navy dress that didn't quite fit in with the pastel theme. Lily's eyes scanned me from head to toe, pausing slightly at my black heels. "Still stuck in mourning?" she whispered at the drink table. I smiled. "No," I said. "Just not pretending anymore." They seated me between 2 cousins I hadn't seen since high school. I made polite conversation, listened to speeches. Daniel gave one. So did Lily. She cried halfway through hers, talked about how love always finds a way. Mom dabbed her eyes. Dad raised his glass, and I bit the inside of my cheek until it bled. After dinner, Lily pulled me aside into the garden. The sky was soft with starlight. The hydrangeas had begun to wilt. "Are you okay?" she asked, tilting her head like a concerned therapist. "I know this is complicated, but I want us to be good again." I met her eyes. "Lily," I said quietly, "did you ever love me?" Her face froze, then, just as quickly, smoothed itself into that performative kindness she'd perfected over the years. "Of course I do. We're sisters." I nodded. That's what I thought. Then I walked back inside, leaving her in the garden, framed by fairy lights and falsehoods. 3 nights before the wedding, she sent another message. "Lily. Hey, don't forget your nail appointment on Thursday. All the girls are doing matching champagne shimmer." I left her on read. On the night of the bachelorette party, they went to a rooftop bar downtown. I wasn't invited, but I went anyway. Not to join them, but to watch. From across the street, tucked into the corner booth of a dark wine bar, I saw them through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Lily twirling with a tiara on her head, Daniel's sister recording everything for Instagram, their friends laughing too hard at nothing. They'd erased me from the story like I was a rough draft, but I was still here, watching, waiting. Back home, I logged into the anonymous Instagram account I'd made weeks earlier. It had 12 followers, a blank profile picture, no posts. Until now. I uploaded the first photo, a close-up of Lily and Daniel from 3 years ago, while he was still mine. Caption: she was already planning the wedding, before the breakup even happened. Then a clip from an old voicemail. Daniel slurring, "You're the only person who's ever stayed. Please don't leave me." Caption: until he found someone younger and closer. Then, the screenshot of the money transfer, $6,200 from my account to his. Caption: love didn't build this wedding. I did. It wasn't spite, it was record-keeping. I didn't use names, I didn't need to. People knew, and by morning, the account had 11,000 views and was gaining momentum. 2 days left until the wedding, and I hadn't RSVP'd, but I wasn't missing it. I just wouldn't be wearing blush. The wedding was set at Willow Lake Estate, a glasshouse venue nestled between silver birches and whispers of old money. Lily always wanted an aesthetic wedding, not a meaningful one. Not sacred, not sentimental. Just photogenic. I arrived in Ain, hour early, Not through the front. Not where the bridesmaids in blush dresses clinked mimosas and pretended to love each other. I came in through the service entrance, wearing tailored black, carrying a slim black clutch that held more power than any bouquet ever could. The staff didn't question me. I looked like I belonged. And I did. Outside, photographers were already setting up their gear. A drone hovered. The florist fussed with the baby's breath tied to each white chair lining the aisle. Inside, I caught a glimpse of Lily through a mirrored wall. She was radiant. She always had been. Bright skin, eyes like invitations, lips curved like secrets. But today, I noticed something different. She looked like someone trying too hard to look perfect. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her hands kept adjusting the same lock of hair. Maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't. Either way, I wasn't here for closure. I was here for clarity. 10 minutes before the ceremony, I slipped into the guest hall. Phones were already being silenced. The string quartet started to hum the prelude. Champagne glasses clinked on distant trays. Then someone gasped behind me. "Elena?" I turned slowly. It was Aunt Grace, my mom's older sister, the one who never got involved but always noticed things. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You're here." I gave her a smile that didn't quite reach either. She opened her mouth, again, but I gently touched her wrist and said, "I'm just here to watch." And I meant it, but I wasn't watching the vows, I was watching the fallout. The Instagram account had grown overnight. 3.7K followers. Every post was time-stamped, watermarked, legally sourced, and anonymous. I had turned the comments off because I didn't want a war. I wanted witnesses. That morning I had posted something new, a final video. It was me. Well, just my voice, layered over photos, documents, and receipts. They asked me to be a bridesmaid in a wedding that was built from the bones of my heartbreak. So here's my RSVP. Through truth. That was it. No names, no faces, but anyone who knew them would know. By the time Lily walked down the aisle, holding Dad's arm and smiling that perfectly rehearsed smile, half the guests had already seen the video. I could feel it. The whispers, the exchanged glances, the way Daniel's best man kept checking his phone and rubbing the back of his neck. I wasn't seated. I stood off to the side, in the shadows near the back corner, beside a column of white roses and Betrayal. When she reached the altar, the officiant began speaking. But he only got 3 lines in before Daniel's phone buzzed. He looked down, paused, went pale, then looked up at her. "What's this?" he muttered. Lily leaned forward. "What?" He turned the screen toward her. Her smile dropped. It wasn't the account. It wasn't the video. It was a message from his boss. "You should see this. Is this about you?" It's circulating internally. She grabbed the phone, scanned, and froze. In that moment, her entire posture collapsed, shoulders dropping, mouth slightly open. The crowd stirred. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" I stepped out from the shadows, just enough to be seen. Her eyes found me across the crowd, across the damage. She stared, jaw tight, eyes wide, breathing like glass about to crack. And I gave her the smallest nod. Not a threat, not a smirk, just recognition. She looked back at Daniel, who now had his phone out, and then his mother, and then their cousin, and suddenly the whole front row was glowing with screens. My mom stood in horror. Dad said, "What is this?" But the whispers drowned them out. The officiant faltered, the crowd grew restless, and Lily dropped her bouquet. It hit the ground with a soft thud that sounded like the beginning of an ending. I turned and walked out, calm, steady, whole. Not because I had ruined the wedding, but because I hadn't. They had. I had just made it visible. By the time I reached the parking lot, the ceremony had dissolved into chaos. From the top of the sloped hill, I could see guests standing, some walking off toward their cars. Others were huddled in 2s and 3s, faces turned toward their phones, whispering behind perfectly manicured hands. A few younger cousins had started recording. I could almost hear Lily's voice in the distance, sharp, strained, breaking. I didn't rush. I didn't hide. I walked to my car like I was leaving a dinner party, measured, composed, heels clicking like punctuation marks. The moment I closed the door and rolled down the window for air, I saw a figure storming toward me in the rear view mirror. Lily, still in her wedding dress, hair falling from its pins, face flushed, hands clenched at her sides like fists that had run out of things to hit. "Elena!" she screamed, her heels sinking into the gravel as she approached. I stepped out slowly. She reached me, breathless, eyes like daggers dipped in salt. "You! Vicious little, how dare you!" She was shaking. "Is it true?" I asked quietly, tilting my head. "That you started seeing him before the breakup?" She looked around wildly, like she was searching for a camera crew to stop the scene. "I didn't cheat," she spat. "We just connected. It wasn't like that." "You posted engagement photos 5 weeks after Daniel broke up with me," I said. "You want to count back the timeline again?" "I was trying to protect you." "No," I said, my voice low. "Now, you were trying to protect your image." Daniel didn't follow her. That told me enough. "You ruined everything," she hissed, stepping closer, nearly nose to nose. "You humiliated me in front of everyone we know." I cut her off. "You humiliated yourself the moment you asked me to smile for your wedding pictures like I hadn't just been discarded." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She stepped back, and that's when I noticed it, the trembling in her lip. Not rage, not indignation, fear, because it had just dawned on her. This wasn't going away, not like last time, not like all the other times she rewrote history and convinced everyone she was the victim. This time, the truth had receipts. It had followers. That night, I stayed silent online. The account kept growing without me. Screenshots were being shared to wedding gossip pages, betrayal forums, even TikTok reaction channels. People debated the ethics. Some asked who it was about. Others already knew. The next morning, I got a text from Daniel. "Daniel, can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I typed back, "We did. When I loaned you rent money. When I let you cry in my arms for hours. When I loved you. We talked. You just weren't listening." I blocked him after that. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Mom. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail. "Elena, we need to talk." I'm not saying I agree with how Lily handled things, but this is all too much. You've made this very public. We're getting calls from people. Your aunt said your cousin's school even brought it up. This is family. Please, let's fix this privately. Privately. Of course. They only care when the truth costs them their comfort. A few hours later, I got another call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost declined, but something told me to pick up. Hello? Hi, is this Elena Morrow? Yes. This is Nadia. I work for the Morrow podcast. I know this is probably overwhelming, but we're a women-led investigative series focused on stories like yours, and your account has caught major traction. Would you be open to talking about your experience anonymously? It's okay if you're not ready. We just believe stories like this deserve a voice, especially when they involve emotional manipulation and financial abuse. I sat there stunned, not because of the offer, but because for the first time, someone believed me. Someone saw me, not as the bitter ex, not as the jealous sister, but as a person who had been wronged and refused to stay silent. I didn't say yes, not yet, but I didn't say no either, because this wasn't just a story about a ruined wedding anymore. It was becoming something else, a reckoning. I didn't sleep that night. Not from guilt, not even from adrenaline, but from something deeper, a calm I hadn't felt in years. There was something oddly quiet about speaking your truth, even if it rips a hole in your family's version of reality. I lay in bed, watching the fan spin slowly above me, thinking about all the years I played nice, all the times I swallowed my voice, made myself small for peace. Now, there was no more room for that. Not with the world watching. Not with the truth finally echoing louder than the lies. By the next morning, I had 3 missed calls from Mom, 1 from Dad, and a long email from Lily. Subject line: Please stop. You've made your point. I know you hate me right now. Maybe you always did. But you've turned this into something ugly and public and irreversible. I get it, okay? You were hurt, but now you've hurt everyone else. Daniel's job is in jeopardy. I'm being harassed. I can't even leave the house without someone whispering. Was that the goal? Are you proud? I didn't reply. Because the letter wasn't really for me. It was for her guilt, or the mask she wore in place of it. That afternoon, I went to a cafe across town. Far from the suburbs, far from the whispers. Just me, my laptop, and a quiet window seat. And I opened the message from the Morrow podcast again. I hovered over the reply button, then clicked. Hi, Nadia. Thank you for reaching out. I'm open to talking. I'll do it anonymously. For now. But yes, I think it's time this story gets told properly. Best. E. That weekend we recorded. They disguised my voice, edited out names, and layered the story with a softness I hadn't expected. It wasn't sensational. It was human. They called the episode the Bridesmaid Clause, when blood isn't thicker than betrayal. And the episode description hit harder than anything I'd written myself. What happens when you're younger? Sister marries the man you once loved, and then asks you to stand by her side as if nothing happened? This week, we unravel a silent family war, a trail of financial deceit, and the quiet revenge of a woman who refused to disappear. It went live on Monday. By Tuesday night, it had 500,000 listens. I hadn't told anyone it was me. But somehow, people knew. Maybe it was the tone, maybe it was the details, or maybe the truth has a way of cutting through even the thickest veil. On Wednesday, my cousin Serena sent a text. Serena, I heard the podcast. I'm sorry, Elena. We should have said something when it all happened. We all knew. We just didn't want to be dramatic. You weren't crazy. You were right. Then another from an old college friend. Jules. Girl, just tell me that was you. That podcast had me sobbing. I've never been more proud to know someone. You're a warrior. I didn't answer every message, but I read them all. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the family problem. I felt like the survivor of it. At the end of the week, I walked into my parents' house for the first time since the wedding. Mom looked thinner. Dad looked older. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and denial. Lily wasn't there. She'd moved in with Daniel's parents temporarily. Apparently, she didn't feel safe in public. Mom sat stiffly at the dining table. Did you have to broadcast it? She asked. I sat across from her, folded my hands calmly. You raised me to tell the truth, I said. Dad looked up, eyes heavy. We were just trying to keep the family together. No, I replied. You were trying to keep the image of the family together. The rest of us were falling apart. There was a long silence. No shouting, no crying, just the sound of something, old and rotten, breaking quietly under the weight of truth. Finally, Mom said, "So what happens now?" I looked around the house, the framed photos, the stitched pillows, the years of smiling through my own erasure. Then I stood. What happens now, I said softly, is I stop pretending, and I walked out. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped building them alone. 2 weeks after the podcast aired, I received a letter in the mail. Not a text, not an email. A real envelope. Handwritten. Slanted cursive I recognized instantly. Grandma, Morrow. She was the only one who hadn't said anything during the fallout. No comments, no calls, nothing. Everyone assumed she was too old to understand what was happening. They were wrong. Dear Elena, when your mother was your age, she swallowed so many things to keep peace, I thought she'd choke on silence. And now, I see you, spitting up everything they taught you to swallow. I am proud of you. This family has always praised obedience and confused it with goodness. But goodness isn't about smiling while people steal from you. I watched what they did to you. I said nothing then, and for that, I'm sorry. But you've reminded me that quiet women don't change anything. Come see me soon. I have something to show you. Love, Grandma. I folded the letter and held it to my chest, not out of sentimentality, but because it felt like a torch being passed. I visited her the next morning. She opened the door herself, refusing to let her aide do it, and smiled at me like she already knew I'd come. Still breathing fire? She asked, ushering me inside. I laughed for the first time in days. Her living room hadn't changed in 20 years. Same green floral couch, same dusty photos of Grandpa in his army uniform, same porcelain elephant on the shelf with the cracked ear. We drank tea, talked about nothing, talked about everything, and then she pulled a folder from a drawer in her hutch. This, she said, is the real will. I blinked. What? I updated it last year, After I saw how your sister and Daniel looked at each other during Thanksgiving dinner, like they'd already decided what parts of your life they wanted to steal, I knew something wasn't right. She handed it to me. Inside, documents signed and notarized, listing me, only me, as the sole beneficiary of the family's lakeside cabin and a considerable trust fund built from stocks I didn't even know she owned. My hand trembled. "Why didn't you say anything before?" I whispered. She sighed. "Because I was raised by women who were taught to wait for the right moment to speak. But I'm dying soon, and I realized something. There's no right moment to do the right thing. There's just now." 3 days later, I met with a lawyer. He confirmed the documents were airtight, uncontestable, legally binding, and silently buried beneath layers of family assumptions for years. When Lily found out, it wasn't through me. It was through an automatic notification from the estate attorney sent to every potential relative listed in the old version of the will. Her name had been removed. That was when the calls started again. Voicemails from Mom, from Dad. Even Daniel tried a second time. This time leaving a long-winded apology wrapped in excuses, but the best one came from Lily. A voice note. Tired, ragged, almost. Sincere. "You win, okay? You win. You got the last word, the money, the sympathy, the narrative. Everyone's on your side now. I'm nothing but the villain in your little podcast story. I hope it was worth it." I didn't reply. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about finally being seen. And some things are worth more than revenge. They're worth reclaiming. I used the money to move. A quiet brownstone on the edge of the city. Not flashy, not loud. But it was mine, fully paid for, under my name. No co-signers, no emotional fine print. I started freelance writing again, small pieces at first, then columns, then essays, and eventually, a publisher approached me, asked if I'd ever considered turning the story into a memoir. I said yes. Not because I needed to relive it, but because other women needed to recognize themselves in it. And at the very beginning of that book, before the first chapter, I added a single line. For the girl, they made a bridesmaid when she should have been the bride. By spring, the story had stopped being just mine. The podcast? It kept climbing. The memoir? It was in early editing stages, and my agent told me a well-known actress wanted to narrate the audiobook. Even the New York Post wrote a piece with the headline, Bridesmaid turned ghostwriter. How a silent sister made noise across the nation. Lily's wedding had gone viral, but not for its floral arrangements or designer dress. Instead, it had become a case study in betrayal wrapped in satin. Used in panels, TikToks, Reddit forums, bridesmaid revenge trended more than once. It was no longer about gossip. It was about pattern recognition. Still, despite all the attention, I didn't expect the email I got in late March. Subject: Morrow Foundation, Women's Resilience, Gala Elena, Morrow are hosting our annual gala celebrating women who've overcome adversity and used their experiences to uplift others. You've been nominated for our keynote address. Your story has resonated deeply with our community. Would you consider speaking? I stared at the screen, not because I was unsure, but because for the first time, someone was asking me to tell my story without hiding behind a blurred voice or anonymity. 3 weeks later, I stood behind the podium in a room full of glass, gold, and evening gowns. I wore navy. Not blush. Never again. The lights dimmed. The audience went still. I adjusted the mic. Then I spoke. When I was asked to be the bridesmaid in my sister's wedding, I said nothing. Not because I didn't have words, but because my family had trained me to stay quiet for their comfort. When the man I once loved married my sister, I was told to be graceful. When they asked me to smile through betrayal, I was told it was maturity. But silence doesn't heal betrayal. It hides it, and I stopped hiding. I told the truth, and it hurt people, but only because the truth often shines a light on what others want to keep in the dark. Some called me vindictive, some called me dramatic, but none of them asked why a daughter, a sister, a woman would need to scream in public after being erased in private. So I wrote. I recorded. I kept the receipts. And today, I stand here not as a bridesmaid, not as the bitter ex, but as a woman who remembered her worth and refused to let them bury it again. When I finished, the room didn't erupt into applause. Not immediately. It sat in silence for a beat, a thick, thoughtful pause, and then rose into a standing ovation, not because I was special, but because I was familiar. Every woman in that room had swallowed something once. Some were still trying to spit it back out, and I had just helped them name it. That night, as I stepped outside into the cold air and let the noise fade behind me, my phone buzzed again, a single message from Lily. Lily. I listened to the speech. I didn't expect you to be gracious. I would have made it about vengeance. You didn't. That's probably why people love you now, not me. Anyway, I hope you're happy. I stared at her words, then typed back, I am. Not because they love me, but because I finally do. I hit send, then blocked her, not out of hate, but because closure doesn't always need applause. Sometimes it just needs a clean ending. The last time I stood in front of my childhood home, it felt like I was haunting a place that had already decided to forget me. But this time, I wasn't a ghost. I had returned for one reason: Grandma's memorial. She passed in, her sleep just 3 weeks after the gala, peacefully. A folded quilt on her chest, sunlight warming her fingers. Her nurse said she was smiling when she went. We buried her in the green dress she always said made her look less tired. I spoke at her service, not as the forgotten daughter, not as the bitter sister, not as the ex-fiancé's shadow, but as the granddaughter she trusted with truth. Lily was there. Of course she was. She wore sunglasses, though the sun was hidden behind clouds. Daniel didn't come. I heard they had taken some space. Or maybe he'd finally seen what I did, years ago, that Lily only loved mirrors, not people. We didn't speak. Not at the funeral, not at the reception. Not even when we passed by the lemonade table and our arms brushed briefly. She didn't look at me. I didn't need her to. What mattered was what happened later. After most guests had left, I stayed back. I sat on the bench near Grandma's grave, under that twisted willow she loved so much, and Mom came to sit beside me. For a long time, we said nothing. Then she said softly, "Your speech at the gala, I watched it online." I turned, surprised. "You did?" She nodded. "You looked strong and sad and real." I hated how real it felt. There was no resentment in her tone, just a kind of worn-out truth. I raised you to be polite, she said. But maybe I should have raised you to be brave. You didn't raise me wrong, I said. You just forgot to protect the right daughter. She flinched at that. But then she nodded. A slow, surrendering nod. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But for the first time, I saw her see me. Not as a role to be managed, but as a woman who survived what they all tried to silence. 2 weeks later, my book was published. It wasn't a bestseller overnight, but it didn't need to be. It was found by women in hidden corners of family pain, by girls who were told to make room, be quiet, wear the same dress, smile for the camera, by people who knew exactly what it felt like to be replaced, yet still asked to clap for the person who took your place. On release day, I walked into a bookstore just to see it, to run my fingers over the cover, to read the dedication again, to the women told to hold their tongues while someone else takes their seat. This time, the story is yours. Someone tapped my shoulder. I turned. A girl, maybe 19, maybe 21, stood. They're holding a copy. Sorry, she said shyly. Are you Elena Morrow? I am. I just wanted to say thank you. This helped me leave someone. Someone who made me feel like I was too much for asking for the bare minimum. I smiled gently. You weren't too much. You were just with people too little. Her eyes welled up. We hugged, and in that moment, I knew. This wasn't just revenge. It was redemption. Not loud, not cruel, not with fire or fame, but with a single, simple truth. They tried to erase me, but I didn't disappear.